I would like to add my welcome to tonight's event, and it's so good to have you here. Current Tara girls, I already know you're fabulous, and your parents, of course, are amazing, and several of the alumni that are here tonight I know. Many of you I don't, except by reputation and the stories that we've gathered about you, and I've been hearing about these wonderful, wonderful women, and I need to tell you, it's a little bit exciting, this whole event. So, before we get going any further, on behalf of us all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Barramatigal people of the Darug Nation. On this land, they taught their children their beliefs, knowledge, and culture, and we pay our respect to them as we seek to do the same for our own children. As we gather on these ancestral lands, we also acknowledge our God and Heavenly Father, who made the heavens and the earth, and to whom we are responsible for the current stewardship of this land that has been entrusted to us. Tonight's event has been in planning for a very long time, and I would like to thank the team at Tara for bringing the vision to life, especially Wendy McDermott, Nikki Williams, Jane Marler, and who, with the support of Tara Alumnae, have helped us bring our little dream to the stage here tonight. The world of work and the role of women within that world is rapidly evolving and changing in this technological age. And this is why tonight's forum is so important for the women of Tara. You know, for more than 121 years, Tara has been educating and shaping girls to become women with strong characters and ingenuity, and who are now increasing the visibility of women's leadership across an array of fields. And we truly believe that every woman is a woman of influence. For current Tara students and recent graduates, in your conversations today, I encourage you to challenge the notions of having a traditional career. What are your passions, your interests? None of us just stick to the boxes in one traditional role anymore. So I would ask you to focus on skills and pathways that may give you opportunities to explore your interests and passions. When looking to the future, open your mind as to what the possibilities may be. To assist this process, we have set about bringing in many women of influence, the Tara Alumnae, and we have a sensational panel here for you tonight with our ambassadors who will share their knowledge and stories after the panel discussion. And I'll now hand over to one of these women and our MC for the evening, Mary Constantopoulos. It's such a fantastic name that I can't say very well. And to introduce and lead our panel. Mary was a fabulous Tara student for many reasons, but particularly because she was involved in every opportunity she could be while she was at school. She left in 2006 to embark on an international studies and law degree, and she now works as a lawyer and so much more. And she continues to use her energy and enthusiasm to forge a diverse career pathway. I know she will share her story and insights into work and life and then with the panel. Thank you, Mary, and welcome.
Thank you, Sue, for that lovely introduction, and thank you all for having me tonight. It is really special to be here surrounded by a group of women that genuinely have the world at their feet, and the school community and the parents that support and care for them. As Sue mentioned, my name is Mary Constantopoulos, but all my friends call me Mary Kay, so that means that all of you can as well now. And I was a Tara girl from kindergarten all the way to year 12, and I finished in 2006. When I reflect on my 13 years at Tara, I have plenty of fond memories, and they extend to sport and music and leadership. But mostly when I remember my time at Tara, I remember my fabulous friends, but they weren't just the students, they were also the teachers that cared for me and looked after me and helped me to become a woman that would walk out into the world, be confident enough to stand on her own 2 feet and use her powerful voice. So I left Tara in 2006, and genuinely at the end of 2006, I really had no idea what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And here's a little secret, I still sort of don't really know what I want to do with the rest of my life. After graduation, I went to Sydney University to do a double degree in international studies and law. And then after I finished my law degree, I went on to become a graduate lawyer at Clayton Utz. I stuck around Clayton Utz for 5 years and I'm still a lawyer to this day, but in my spare time, I've actually started a media company called Ladies Who League, which is all about encouraging women to get involved in conversations about sport. So when I was at Tara, I never would have thought that I would have forged a career path that would have included social media, because I'm so old that when I was at school, Facebook genuinely wasn't a thing, and neither was Twitter or Instagram or podcasting, and they're the tools that I use to get my message out into the world. So I guess the big message for all the girls sitting in this room is that really the world is genuinely at your feet. You are all talented, wonderful women. And you may have an idea right now about what you want to do with the rest of your life, but there are so many paths that you can choose to take. And I'm not the only woman that has had a career that has taken many different twists and turns. We've got an amazing panel here tonight. So if you could give them a really big round of applause, and then I'll introduce you all to them. So we have Nadia Mundy, we have Kathy Knight Agarwal, we have Jessica Sarkis, Hansel Jew, Dr. Louise Ellis and Lucy Dallywater. One more round of applause, because applause is great. Nadia, I'm going to start with you because you're the closest to me. You left Tara in 2003 with a very strong sense that you wanted to go and do law. But since then, you've really used your law degree to help people, particularly people that are disadvantaged. I want to know, is that something that's important to you, and was choosing a career that sort of aligned with your values something that you looked for?
Yes, in short.
Good start.
Ever since I was young, and I'm sure this is the same for everyone in this room, I have really had a soft spot for people who have been disadvantaged, and that's for a variety of reasons, but I've really always wanted to fight for the underdog. And of course there have been times where I have not known how to do that. But what I have known is that has been something that was really important to me. And I've very briefly worked in roles where I don't do that, and I just known they weren't for me. It just, doing what I do, I work at Legal Aid as a criminal defence lawyer, so we represent people in society who are underprivileged, and that's part of me almost. So yes.
Nadia, I think it's a really important point you raise, because we often think about what are we good at school, but we don't think about what are our values or our purpose, or think about a career that aligns with that, and it sounds like you've very much done that.
Well, I think you're very lucky if you get to work in an area at the end of the day that you genuinely love. So if you try to, and often you happen to be good at the things you love. So if you can keep working hard at those things, then I guess that's a very lucky place to be in.
Dr. Kathy, may I call you Kathy? Is that all right?
Absolutely.
But you are a doctor, which is very impressive. You are a practicing dietitian and an expert, and known internationally and nationally as a maternal nutrition expert.
That's right.
Now, I assume at school you had an interest in science, but at what point did you discover that maternal nutrition was something that you were particularly interested in?
Well, yes, just to answer you in regards to my interest in science. When I was here at Tara, I studied for the HSC maths and biology, but I did not take Miss Stinton's advice and do chemistry, which I probably should have. But I entered my first year of university and was, I guess, very determined, even though I hadn't done chemistry before. I got lots of tuition, and I gave up. Well, we didn't have social media back then either. We only had these big computers which were really very clunky with the lime, that's right, the lime green kind of text. But anyway, I'm going off the track. I got extra tuition and I had a passion to succeed, and I got through. But in saying that, I need to acknowledge a very special person in this room, Mrs. Cropper, because I took the track to nutrition as a result of Mrs. Cropper and Mrs. Endine. So I also did, it was called home science back in those days, but food technology. And it was one of the things at school that I really truly felt that I was good at. And Mrs. Cropper and Mrs. Endine nurtured my passion for nutrition. And as a result, that's the reason that I took the path that I did. It was, as I said, it was a bit rocky there for a while, but with perseverance, you certainly can get there in the long run. And I was the kind of student at school that I always tried my best, but I was never top of the class. I wasn't particularly sporty either, but I felt very nurtured. I mean, I obviously had wonderful parents, but I also had a wonderful grounding here at school. And I think that I left Tara with the confidence to go and follow my dreams. And one of the reasons I ended up going to maternal nutrition is because my father's an obstetrician, so I grew up hearing about babies all the time, and so my love of nutrition, it seemed like a very good fit to go into that area. And I'm very glad I did, because I've had a wonderful career to date. Certainly not over. I've got many, many years left in me, but it's always full of wonderful challenges.
Kathy, how lovely that you acknowledged Mrs. Cropper, and I think it's so nice for those of us that are alumni to look into the audience and see teachers that really, really shaped our Tara journey. So I can see Mrs. Van Zylen from where I'm sitting. I saw Mr. Baker earlier and Mr. Bonson staring at me in the corner, 3 teachers that were very, very formative for me. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I have not been back to Tara in probably about 25 years, and it is looking absolutely beautiful. And I got tingles as I was walking up the pathway, because some of the old buildings obviously I can recognise, but a lot of new buildings as well. But so many of the happy memories started flooding back, and I think we all need to give Mrs. Cropper a round of applause, because I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for her. So thank you.
Jessica, I'm coming to you next. Now, you are an entrepreneur, which for me is one of the bravest professions that anyone can pursue, because you have to get really comfortable with the idea of failure. So I'm really interested in hearing from you about how you've developed resilience during your career.
Well, resilience and failure, the acceptance of failure comes quite naturally once you get used to it. So as soon as you do anything...
So you don't know anything about it then?
So as soon as you do anything, you always have to think, what's the worst that can happen? You know, there will always be a chance for you to fail. I did a really, really big mistake when I was 21 years old, for example. So I ordered 2,000 jars for one of my companies, and they were 2,000 incorrect jars. I could not use them at all. I didn't check the proof properly. It was a massive mistake, and it was a fantastic failure that helped me, one of the early tools that helped me to build resilience. So it was literally from that moment, you know, you sit down and you cry. You get so upset. You think, oh my gosh, I just lost $5,000. That's all I had as a 21-year-old, you know. And you think, okay, that was really silly. But what did I learn from this? And it's those moments where you're sitting down and you're reflecting and you're learning, that is resilience. Because from those moments, you actually pick yourself back up and you keep on going.
It's so true, and you sort of, the next time you make a mistake, you have the cry, but it doesn't last as long, and then eventually you're making mistakes and you're just like, you know what, let's move on, right?
That's it. That's exactly it. And adopting that attitude will get you so far in life.
Hansel, it's your turn now.
Hello.
Hello, how you going?
Yes, I am on.
You've
I'm
waited
bored.
very patiently down there for me to ask you a question.
It doesn't come natural to us media folk.
Waiting.
For our turn, but no.
You've done really well.
Oh, thank you.
Now, Hansel, the industry that you're in is one that's been very disrupted over the last couple of years.
Yes.
And you worked at Mamma Mia, which I think is one of the key sort of disruptors in the
Yes.
media space.
Yes.
What was that like?
Well, I think the first thing is I think mainstream media as a whole is certainly being really disrupted. I think radio is a little bit different though to print and TV. And the primary reason is radio is so personal. It's the one medium where it's you and the host. It's not you, a newsreader telling you a story that they're simultaneously reading to millions of other people. It's you and them, and you have a chance to call in and have your say as well. So I think radio's a little bit different, and we've adapted really well, I think, to the changing technology. So pretty much every radio station was a pretty early adopter of podcasting and websites and social media. So we've survived, I think, that quite well. In terms of though working for a disruptor, that was quite interesting because you spend your days in a really awkward situation. So when I was at Mamma Mia, it was still quite the early days. So on the one hand, you want to be mainstream media, you want to be the agenda setter. But on the other hand, you don't want to be. You want to be different. You want to set yourself apart. So it's a delicate balancing act, but it is really interesting to see it from both perspectives, from mainstream and from a disruptor's point of view. But I think regardless of which area of media you want to go in, there are so many opportunities still out there, despite what you hear. It is interesting.
And I think it's so interesting because anyone can be the media now. Like people can literally start their own Twitter accounts and become, over time, influential voices.
I think anyone can be media, sure, but not everyone can be a journalist. Not everyone can be an agenda setter or, an editor. There is, I think, still a role for a professional journalist who is trained to take all the information from social media, from, first-hand sources, to understand what that actually means and to disseminate that in a meaningful manner that isn't off the cuff or incorrect or inaccurate. Anyone can be, but not everyone can be a journalist or a professional.
Thank you. Dr. Louise, you're next. Can I call you Louise? Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Louise, can you tell us about some of the influential women that have inspired you during your career and what it is about those women that's inspired you?
Yes, sure. So I've really had two key women who've been a major source of inspiration to me in my life. The first one of those is actually my mum. I know that sounds like the obvious answer for everyone, but I'd like to tell you a little bit about her actually. She's a very intelligent, persistent and optimistic person. And the key event that shaped my mum's life was that she was involved in a major car accident when she was a newlywed. Her parents were in the car, her new husband was in the car, and her parents died instantly. And my mum endured a very bad traumatic brain injury. She was told by the doctors that she would not live, and that if she did, she'd never walk again. She lost her memory back to a 5-year-old, and she never regained those memories. So she actually had to learn to read and write again. And the other thing is she didn't even remember who her husband was. She had a wedding band on, but she had absolutely no memories of him. But what got my mum through was the level of optimism that she had. She was so persistent, and she never wanted to give up. And that's really shaped who I am today. Also a sense of resilience as well, what one of the other panellists was saying. That whole feeling of, just feel the fear and do it anyway. What have you got to lose? Those sort of qualities I've really got from my mum. The other person that's been a major influence on me has been Lorraine Caulfield, who was a teacher here at Tara. She taught English and history when I was here. And I probably wasn't one of her pet students, I didn't do debating. And I didn't get to spend a huge amount of time with her, although I did do 3-unit history and English. But what I loved about her was the level of professionalism that she had and how she'd always go the extra mile. She'd ask all of us students over to her house during the holidays for extra study sessions, and she'd even cook us lunch. I mean, I just thought it was incredible. These are things that she didn't have to do, but she cared so much about us and wanted us to do well that she put in that extra effort. And the other thing I loved about her was that she took really great pride in her appearance. She was so polished and well-spoken, and that really stuck with me as well. And unfortunately, in my career that I'm in now, there hasn't really been any women who have inspired me because there's unfortunately not a lot of women up in the higher levels of academia. I do hope that will change, and I do think it will. I haven't had any female bosses. They've all been male. But as I said, I hope to see that will change.
Well, Louise, you will be the inspiration for the next generation of women coming through. And thank you for sharing such lovely insights. My mum's my hero. She's in the audience tonight. So that was lovely. Thank you. Lucy.
Hi.
Hello. My good friend Lucy. Lucy, as a senior teacher, you really do have a very important role in shaping the futures of the students that are in your care. Is that something that inspires you every day?
Yeah, absolutely. And I see it as a huge privilege. But I think the word that we're all talking about and that is actually really hard to define is the term leader and the concept of leadership. At a middle leadership seminar recently that I was at, the first thing they asked us to do was to define the term leader. And it actually was quite difficult because we started talking about the concept of an influencer. We started talking about the concept of good and bad leadership. I mean, Hitler was a leader. But I'm not going to get on my political standpoint, as I often do in my classrooms. But this concept of leadership, we're all involved in it. That's really why we're here. It's brought us all together. But it's a very difficult word to define. But what we need to remember is that leadership comes in all forms. And leadership isn't always the person at the front of the room with the loudest voice. My mum always said to me, empty vessels make most noise. There are a couple of my teachers here as well who probably realise that I didn't take my mum's advice until a lot later in life. But for me, this is, in a school setting, this is demonstrated. For me, I'm very conscious of the fact that it's more in what I do than what I say. And I listened to the Mamma Mia podcasts a lot, and I like to look at where a lot of Mia Freedman's quotes come from, but one of them actually originated with Marion Wright Edelman, and she said, "You can't be what you can't see." And that's what I want to be for the students that I teach. I've been teaching boys just next door for 11 years, and this year I moved into a co-educational setting where I have boys and girls, and I've become really conscious of this. Obviously, as the head of English, I should probably be reiterating that eloquence is key, but actually there's more to it than this. I got a letter from one of my Year 12 students this year, and it was just really beautiful, and she said, "I've watched the way that you conduct yourself, not just when you're teaching us, but all around the school, and you really do set a new standard for us all." So for me, it's these. I taught this girl every day, for 55 minutes every day. And she's taken away that knowledge, but for me, this is the responsibility that I have. It's not just about knowledge. It's about what else we're bringing into the world. And I think as women, we have this opportunity to just raise that benchmark a whole lot higher for everyone, not just for women. And it's been, so I've had those experiences with girls, but then teaching boys, I've also had it in a completely different perspective. I always used to say to my boys, your wives and your girlfriends are going to be this empowered, so get used to it. So I've taken the responsibility on just in different ways with boys and girls. Yeah.
That's very good advice, Lucy, and thank you for sharing that quote, because I say it a lot when it comes to women in sport, so it's really handy to know where that quote actually came from.
Yeah, and if just to put this out there, I show my daughters, I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, I show them Mary stuff all the time.
That's funny because I'm showing my mum your daughters all the time, so... Nadia, we're coming back to you now. Now, the law has traditionally been a very male-dominated industry. I'm curious, have you seen the law change over the last couple of years? And what can we do in the legal industry to encourage more women to rise to the top? That's a big question, sorry.
That is a big question. I think everyone's experiences are different, so I can only speak from my own. I might answer this in two parts. First, I should say that yes, unfortunately, gender inequality does exist and it is quite prevalent within the legal industry. And I'll come back to that. But from my experience, I personally haven't experienced that. That being said, I work in the public sector and I think that is probably a little bit different to the private sector. And legal aid as a government body is very accommodating when it comes to women and the workplace. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I have had a lot of female superiors. But I do know a number of women, mostly who are older than me, but who have experienced gender inequality or who have very much felt gender bias in the workplace. And reality is, if you look at the numbers of people who were appointed public defenders this year or who were made silk or who get appointed to the bench, they are majority men. But that is changing and there are more women taking those positions. And I can only see that changing further because now there are more females who are graduating with law degrees. So change is inevitable and we're the people who are going to change that at the end of the day.
Thank you.
Does that answer?
Yes, it does. We are the people and the girls sitting in this room are also going to be key drivers of change. So please don't forget how important all of you are. Kathy, I'm curious, how okay is it for people not to know what they want to do when they finish school?
It's absolutely okay.
It's so okay, isn't it?
It's so okay. One of my roles is as a convener of a number of different degrees at the University of Canberra. I teach as part of the Faculty of Health. So my main role is obviously to get students through, but also to get students through with a sense of this is really what I should be doing and what I really want to do. And sometimes students say after the first year, they think, look, I always wanted to do pharmacy or I always wanted to do nutrition, but it's not actually what I thought it would be. And so they'll come and have a chat with me and we'll talk about perhaps another direction where they can use some of the skills that they've already developed, but go on to do something else. And so when you're 17, 18 and you're leaving school, I think it's amazing that some of you really know what you want to do and you go on and you complete a degree or a course, you go on and have a wonderful career. However, if you start something after leaving school and you don't think it's quite for you, as I said previously, that's okay. And I think no education is ever wasted. Learning is a wonderful thing. And I think that to have the expectation that everyone should know exactly the career path that they should take when they leave school is possibly unrealistic.
And I think the world changes so quickly as well. Like, as I said, when I was at school, podcasts weren't a thing. Now I host a podcast. So how are you sort of to know how the world is going to change?
Absolutely. It's and it's changing all the time. And my area of science, I mean, our knowledge of science and medicine, it doubles every 5 years in the world. That's pretty amazing. That's incredible. And so there are new opportunities opening up all the time. But I just, like I said previously, follow your dreams. And if you have passion for something, you try your very best. And then you will succeed.
Jess, I'd be really interested to hear from you about how you've learnt to back yourself throughout your career.
A little bit of a tough question, but I think it always came down to having my end goal in mind. So I have a very clear vision of what my definition of success is and what that means to me. So my definition of success has always been about strength and character. And the person that I'm aiming to be needs to be okay with failing. And that's all about determination. That's all about backing yourself. It has to be okay with being fearless or being brave or being positive. All of those characteristics were about backing myself because it's all relevant to who I want to be and where I want to go.
Thanks, Jess. You did really well on a tough question. Hansel, this is a question I actually really want the answer to because I need help with it myself. Working in the media, we are on our phones all the time, particularly on social media.
Yes.
How do you juggle the need to have your phone in your hand for your job, but then the need to sort of put it away when you're at the dinner table?
To be honest, you don't. I mean, you're going to notice I have my phone in front of me right now.
I put
and
it away
it's
at the
buzzing
dinner
away with Twitter and emails. It can be really hard, and especially given it is a 24-hour news cycle these days, you don't ever shut down. You're constantly, everyone is so desperate to be, the leader, to have that story first or to, to get the latest scoop. So we're constantly trawling through social media and checking emails, seeing if any listeners have any tips for us and watching it as well and listening to it. It can be a bit tiring, but I think it depends on, the sort of people that you have around you. I have, a great family and a great group of friends who really, hone it into me like, you're on your phone, you need to get off. Like, the world's not going to end if you don't check Twitter for the next 5 minutes. It's okay. So I think that's what it is. You just need to surround yourself and have people there to remind you to, to just kind of zone out for a bit. But I think the industry that we're in, we can't, just put the phone away and lock it up and say, that's it. We do need to have it on us, unfortunately. So we are that antisocial person at the dinner table.
My mum is laughing at me.
Oh, yeah.
I do put it away at the dinner table. It's
That's
hard
good.
though because
It is.
people want to talk to you all the time, and I don't really
Yeah.
appreciate that Apple now has that new app that tells you how much screen time you've had in the last week.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
need
Well,
my
I've got a
phone
Samsung, and it doesn't
me.
tell me that.
Okay, well, it started telling me that, and look, the answer isn't particularly good. Maybe
Jeez.
I'll come back to Louise now.
I
Louise,
know, I saw that too on mine. It's very scary.
Louise, you touched on before how you haven't had many women to look up to in your particular career. What do you think you can do in your profession to encourage more women to join your profession?
To be honest, I don't think that the issue is that women aren't entering fields of science. There are more and more women entering science than ever before. Things are really changing in that area. So the issue is that we're not getting enough women in the higher levels of science and in leadership positions. Unfortunately, at the moment, only 20% of professors at universities are female. So we really need to see some changes in that area. And from my point of view, I think it will change. As someone else was saying, there's more than 50% of people doing science degrees now. It's still less than 20% in engineering and technology degrees, but in areas of like natural, physical and health sciences and so forth, we've got well over 50% females. So I think the natural shift will be that over time more women are going to have to be in these leadership positions. It just has to happen. So I'm quite optimistic that it will and that changes are there. And there's a lot of support for women at the moment to enter leadership positions as well. There's a lot more mentoring and so forth.
I'm optimistic too. I think there are days where it's really, really challenging and you sort of look ahead and you think, how are we ever going to get there? But there has been tremendous change in the last couple of years and I'm also confident that that's going to continue. Lucy, you have two of the most beautiful little girls I've ever seen. And by beautiful, I don't just mean beautiful, I mean they are courageous and adventurous and sassy and intelligent and all the wonderful things that little girls should be. How has having those two daughters changed your perspective on work?
Oh, this is a really good question.
Thank you.
Because it's something I get asked. I thought that having kids would completely change the way that I teach in the classroom. But it actually, what I've realised is I'm really good at building relationships, and it's something I've always been good at. So I still build really strong relationships in the classroom. So if I break it down into 2 points, the first is what it's really changed for my career is in education is I actually have a much greater sympathy for parents. And so my interactions with parents are really different. Not that I was judgy before I had kids, but there is no judgment. I dropped my 5-year-old off at kindergarten with great trepidation, wondering what embarrassing thing she's going to say to her kindy teacher that day. The other day she drew a giraffe. It didn't look like a giraffe. I just went, "Sweetie, who else saw this?" And she went, "Oh, no one." I went, "Okay, we're going to keep it that way." So what I've come to realise, I really love parent-teacher interviews, and I love meeting, because you've gotten to know your kids for a few weeks. He was like, "Yes, can't wait to meet the parents." And what I realised is there are very few consistencies between children are different. Every child, every human is different. And then you add in a set of parents, which are two equally unique sets of people. That dynamic is different in every single family. So you can't say the parents of, the child of divorced children are going to have all these issues. The children of, who have a full family that's together are going to have these issues. It's just, everybody is different. And I completely, I just respect parents so much more. So my approach to parent-teacher interviews and the way that I talk to parents, I think, is just more, what can I do to help you? Because they're in this with us as well. And sometimes it's just more clarifying questions for them and supporting them, because I know that's what I need as a parent. But secondly, it's the fact that I've had girls has really changed me. So my husband and I actually wanted 2 boys. And we, each of us, we only have brothers. I worked at a boys' school. We only know how to deal with boys. Then maybe that's why our girls are the way that they are. But I'll bring it back to what I said before. You can't be what you can't see. And this has really changed how I go about what I do every day, because I've realised that they mimic very quickly. And so it's important that they see mummy and daddy doing equally the same things. So mummy and daddy both go to work. Mummy and daddy both do the laundry. Daddy probably does a bit more than mummy. And they both do gardening. And we actually share these. We're a team. And they, the most important thing I've come to realise is that teaching them to be assertive, not aggressive, because I think one thing that feminists are accused of is being aggressive. And you can be assertive and not be aggressive, and they're two very different things. My husband says that I'm very stubborn. I'm not stubborn, but I'm assertive. But the difference between the two things is, and that's why I said to him, I'm assertive. When you're assertive, you're actually very well informed. That's why you are assertive, and you don't need to be rude. If you stand up for what's right, you're doing it, and you're doing it from an informed position. That's really, really important, and that's how I empower my girls. And I watch them do that, and I try and encourage them to do teamwork, particularly when it comes to packing up the house. And watching them negotiate with each other, it doesn't happen smoothly all the time. I do not have, Instagram is one thing, although I'm very real on Instagram every now and then.
It's awesome.
One was face down on the floorboards the other day. She did not get in the morning photo. But I encourage my girls to be thinkers, because this is what the world needs, girls who are assertive and are thinking. And the way that they assert themselves is by giving up educated, well-rounded, well-thought-through opinions.
I think assertive is a great word, and I know a lot of little girls that are being raised to be assertive. I have a 4-year-old goddaughter. Yep. Assertive is, that is how I will describe her from now on. Nadia, do you have any advice, one key piece of advice for the young women sitting in this room?
One key piece is
you can have more than one if you like.
I would say be kind to other people, support each other. You are each other's best friends and best support, and you will get where you aim to get at the end of the day, not only because you work hard, but because somebody else has supported you or backed you as much as you've backed yourself. I guess second to that would be find something you really, really love doing, and then you get to wake up and do it every day.
Nadia, thank you for raising the supportive point, because a woman that I really admire is a woman named Dr. Kirsten Ferguson, and she started a campaign last year called Celebrating Women, where every day on social media for an entire year she posted the profiles of two women, just to share with social media, and so those women could be celebrated. And I know we often talk about pulling one woman up with you, but Kirsten says that isn't good enough anymore, that we literally need to cast up a fishing net and bring up the whole next generation of women, because we can all get better together. We're not in competition with each other, and we genuinely all get better when we support each other. Kathy, you spend a lot of time travelling and sharing messages and speaking. I'm curious, is speaking something you've always been comfortable with, or have you had to learn to develop your voice?
Oh, absolutely. I've had to learn to develop it over the years. I used to be terrified of public speaking. And I look back at all the wonderful teachers that I've had in my life, and I realise that they had to do that every single day of their professional life. It's a skill that I have developed with lots of practice, and I think that particularly when you're talking about things that are very important to you, and you think there are messages that you want to share with others, then it makes speaking in a public forum a lot easier. I speak at conferences, so as part of my work as an academic, I undertake research, and I will go and speak about my research at conferences, but I also get to speak from very much a community, within a community perspective regarding the work that I do in the South Pacific. So my work involves teaching nurses and doctors in Samoa and Tonga about good nutrition, and about there's lots of prevention messages that I need to communicate, but also lots of curative measures that we're involved in. And I guess that work in particular is very special to me, and I know that my time at Tara, I developed a strong faith, and the desire to one day help other people. And I think, as I said previously, when you're speaking from the heart, I think things then come very naturally.
Because it's genuine and authentic, right?
Absolutely, that's right. And it's okay to stumble a little bit along the way, get a little bit flushed from time to time, but ultimately, you're right. If you're speaking from the heart and you're spreading a message, whatever it is, a good message, I think that's the most important thing.
I'm going to change up the order a little bit here. Lucy, I'm just going to come back to you, and then we'll come back. Lucy,
Okay.
like many of our other panellists, you've gone back and done further study. I'm curious, how did you know when the right time, and I say the word right in inverted commas, right time was to go back and do that?
I started my Masters of Educational Leadership at the beginning of last year. I felt my brain dying, and I wasn't sure if it was baby brain because I'd just come off the back of my second lot of maternity leave, or whether I'd actually reached a point of stagnation. I think something that everyone's pushed is that concept of risk-taking and growth mindset, and it's something that we're constantly trying to develop in students. And I went to a women's networking evening. I didn't go, well, my brain's dying, I'm going to go and do my Masters. I just went, I'm just going to ease into the process. So I grabbed a girlfriend who was kind of in a similar phase, and we did our undergrads together, and we went to this women's networking in education thing, and lady who was quite high up in leadership at an all-girls school, it wasn't this school, said, well, if you want to be in leadership in a girls' school, you need a Masters in education. And we both just kind of went, okay. Anyway, so we kind of dragged each other into it. And having someone that you can call, someone else was just saying, having someone that you can call and that support for each other is really important. So my friend and I, we signed up and we went, okay, let's start. So we'd call each other every Monday night. We had that phone call booked in, and we were like, okay, what are you doing? And as we were going through it, we both just realised, oh my goodness, my brain needed this. My brain needed this nourishment. And it was such a huge life lesson for both of us that you never stop learning. And that is really, really important. And whether it comes through risk-taking, whether it comes through seeking further education, whether it comes through, and I encourage my students to do this all the time, go down a Google hole for a very specific purpose. I know people pick up their phones kids pick up their phones to procrastinate all the time. I'm just going to check social media or see what the news is. be intentional, and I call it useful procrastination. Seek more information, because that's really the key to growing your mind, and that's what I found why I needed. I was just so thirsty for more information and for something bigger.
I'm going to try that rabbit hole tonight instead of lying in bed saying I'm going to go to bed in 10 minutes and then 20 minutes still be scrolling through my Twitter feed.
Yeah.
And by 20 minutes, I mean an hour later. Jess, if you could go back to a 16-year-old Jess and give her some advice, what would it be? So not long ago.
No, it wasn't long ago at all. There would be advice. It would be to believe in yourself. So believing in yourself a lot more than what I was thinking when I was 16. So there's a lot of self-doubt, a lot of, oh gosh, I'm not sure. What degree should I choose? What should I do after school? It doesn't matter. Just believe in yourself. If you somehow go down the wrong path, that's okay, as long as you believed in yourself to get there. That would probably have to be the only advice I would say.
I think it's great advice because for so many women I know we suffer from imposter syndrome. Like you walk into a room and you look around and you go, I don't belong here. I'm only here because of luck. And when someone told me that, I used to say that a lot, I'm here because of luck. It's like, hang on, I'm not here because of luck. I've worked really, really hard to be where I am. I'm not going to be shy about saying that. So yeah, back yourselves. That's great advice. Thanks, Jess. Hansel, can you tell us about some of the skills you learn at school which you think have been most important throughout your career?
I think the biggest skill, which would also probably be my key advice, is hassling, to be honest. Hassling teachers to, look over essays during the holidays. Mr. Bonson's got he's hanging his head in shame because I did that to him a lot.
Do I need to cut you off here? No, I'm joking.
No, but, you hassle teachers to give you more feedback. You hassle teachers to spend a little bit of extra time with you. And that was something that a lot of teachers really, supported me doing. And that's really paid off in my career because you don't get anywhere in media without hassling, asking people for that, that to give you a chance, to give you work experience, to give you that job, and then, hassling them to give you that promotion, to give you time on air. It's probably the biggest life lesson, and, hassling people to be your mentor, to help support you, to guide you, to give you advice. So yeah, definitely hassling is my biggest thing, and feel free to hassle your teachers too, so...
Hassling and hustling, I like it.
Hassling and hustling.
And not being afraid to ask. Like I feel like a lot of people are afraid to ask, whereas the reality is if you ask someone for something or to do something, the worst that they can say is no, and then you say thanks very much, and then you go hassle or hustle the next person.
Absolutely. I mean, if I can indulge myself for a little bit.
Please.
I mean, the way that I ended up in my job was I hassled. So I was having lunch, and Ben Fordham, who you probably know from Channel 9 and 2GB, he was having lunch behind me. And I just thought, you know what? I'm probably never going to see him again. I might as well just see if he'll give me work experience. And I was at uni at the time. I turned around. I just said, hey, my name's Hansel. I'm a media student. I want to do what you do. I want you to give me work experience. And I'm not leaving you alone until you do. So he did. He gave me his number and I called him up literally the next day. And I did it. And I was like, I want to keep coming back. And then I got a job. So, like you said, the worst thing I can say is no, and the best thing is that it'll completely change your life.
And I actually find that most people say yes. So I think about guests that I've had on my podcast, people are like, how did you get that person? I asked them.
Exactly.
That's it. There's literally no secret other than I asked them.
And in media, everyone is constantly looking to, foster bright young women to take on roles, to be on air. So they're always looking for... All of us are always, on the lookout for bright young women who look like, they're really keen to do the job.
Great advice, thank you. Louise, the final word is with you. No, not at all. Have you got some advice for the young women in the room tonight?
I might repeat a lot of what other people have said tonight.
Say it again because they're all good messages and everyone needs to hear them again.
The first thing I'd say is make sure you choose a career that you're passionate about, which we've all said. It's just so important. Don't follow something, my parents told me to do this, or I know my parents, they wanted me to do accounting. They said to me, why are you doing a psychology degree? That's a Mickey Mouse artsy rubbish kind of career. I didn't listen to a word of what they had to say. I just knew that I had to follow my own path, my own journey, and I've loved every minute of it. The other thing I'd say is to be adaptable and flexible. There's so many changes in the workplace now. I'm sure you've all heard about them, with changes in technology and robotics and big data and everything else that's going on. They're actually saying that about 40% of current degrees will be obsolete in 10 years' time. And they're saying that your generation will probably change careers 7 times in your lifetime. So you need to be prepared to be flexible. And along the way, just constantly learning and getting new skills and adapting those skills in other areas. I've moved around quite a bit, jumping from one area to another, clinician roles, research roles, medicine roles, psychology. Oh, now I'm interested in, brain injury or whatever else. I've flitted around quite a bit, but the skills that I've had have allowed me to make those changes. The other thing I'd say is to be resilient, which we've said before. Feel the fear and do it anyway. What's the worst that can happen? Give yourself a chance. It doesn't matter if you fail. You can get yourself back up and do it again. To be confident in yourselves, that's really important. And I'd like to say for women, support one another. I've seen so much, I don't know about the rest of the women on this panel, but I have seen bullying in the workplace, and I have to say it's from a lot of women bringing down other women, and I'd really like to see this change. We all need to be supporting one another. And along your journey, don't lose sight of who you are. You'll go through lots of changes in your life, having kids and so forth. And what I've admired most about certain women is the way they've held true to who they are and haven't lost their own identity and who they are. So make sure you maintain that as well.
And you said you'd be repeating what everyone else said.
Pretty much have.
No, you haven't. Look, can we just put our hands together for this amazing panel? I genuinely feel more confident about the movement towards gender equality with women like you in the world. So thank you so much for your wonderful insights tonight. And from all the panellists and the ambassadors in the room to the girls in the room, I think we sort of feel the same way, in that for each of you, your journey is really just at the beginning, and you literally have the world at your feet and have a very real role in going out into the world and making it a better place. So we wish you all the very best of luck, and are genuinely filled with excitement when we think about what you are all going to go out into the world and achieve.